Welcome back to SportsLine, everybody, here on News Channel 5 Plus. Jon Burton with you. Great to have you with us. You know, I just passed my 10th anniversary living and working here in Nashville and covering sports. And in that time, I don't think there are few people I have more respect for than our next guest. She is the Hall of Fame sports writer for the state of Tennessee for the Associated Press. She knows all, she tells all. The great Teresa Walker joins us. Teresa, it's been far too long that we haven't had you on the Wednesday extravaganza here on SportsLine. Welcome back. Please charge it to my head and not my heart.
Well, thank you for the kind words. And if I don't know it all, you're not going to know it because I'm going to talk so much you're going to think I do.
Teresa, my theme for the night has kind of been Titans Predators at the crossroads. I just look at, you know, how their seasons ended, where they are, the players that they have, the players they could potentially lose. And it feels like both teams have some big decisions to make as to how they want to proceed going forward. I kind of spouted off about the Titans in the first segment. So let's start with the Nashville Predators. Poyle and Hines are finally going to speak tomorrow, I believe. And you have to wonder if they're taking their time on purpose because they want to be really calculated in what they have to say. You know, on the one hand, you look at their season, right? They weren't expected to make the playoffs, but they do make the playoffs, but they're swept in the first round by a very good Colorado Avalanche team, a team that I think is poised to win the Stanley Cup this year. But, and we've talked about it, you've been on the radio show with me and Greg Pokes, you join us every Monday, and we've talked about it. You know, you look at the individual success that this team has had. You know, Yossi, 96 points, 2 goal scorers in Duchesne and Forsberg. You know, UC Saros becoming a Vezina Trophy finalist, top goaltender, and you sit there and you wonder, why did they falter so much towards the end of the season? And why weren't they at least a little bit more competitive against Colorado? Again, Colorado's good. And now you're looking at Forsberg's deal possibly being up. What do they do with him? What's David Poyle's future as GM of this team? What's the succession plan? And it feels like with the Nashville Predators, and we'll hear what Poyle and Hines have to say tomorrow, obviously, but it just feels like there are more questions with this franchise right now than answers. What say you?
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that, you know, they're finally going to talk to us tomorrow. The season ended a week ago Monday. Mm-hmm. Players talk to us the very next day. And, you know, usually, you know, when they talk to us, they've gone through that exit process, talking to coaches, talking to, you know, Poyle, you know, and just trying to figure out, you know, what they could do better next year, what they need to work on this off season, that kind of thing. You know, to put it in comparison, the Grizzlies GM talked to media Sunday at noon.
Wow. For
a team that finished up its season midnight, essentially midnight time on Friday night. So, you know, yes, the presumption is that they've been, you know, trying to work things out. You know, Jon Hines, you know, his contract was up, although the team holds a one-year option, and he, you know, had been presuming that since Hines was talking with us tomorrow, they're probably going to be announcing an extension for Jon Hines. So, you know, you would think that they have spent this last week plus working out a plan for moving forward. But you know, that's the thing. I mean, yes, it's a rebuilding process, you know, trying to do a competitive rebuild, whatever phrase David Poyle wants to use. There's still the fact that, you know, this team, you know, just seemed to fall off a cliff when the calendar flipped from March to April. And for that whole, you know, how many times do we hear the phrase aggressive identity? We have an identity. It's aggressive. Well, that aggressiveness led to, you know, the most fighting majors in the NHL by 23 more than the next team, leading the league in penalties per game, penalty minutes per game, rather. And all that, you know, that takes a toll, John, when you're playing that kind of a physical style.
Sure.
And, you know, and it does feel like they kind of just fell off the map there. You know, from dominating some teams and scoring 6 goals in March to, you know, trying to survive and get a point and get to a shootout or overtime, and, you know, and then the final end, winning one of the final 9 games, even the last regular season game, where if they win that game and don't blow a big lead, then they're playing Calgary and have a chance at a much easier opponent than, you know, a very popular, besides you, pick to win the Stanley Cup. So, you know, and it just, that's what I'm wondering. How do they address that? You know, can you be aggressive and quit committing dumb penalties. And then, David Poyle, 72. He's the winningest, longest tenured GM in the NHL between his stints with Washington and now this franchise, building it up literally from nothing as an expansion franchise. And John Hines is his third coach. And, he went through the building process, dealt with a fire sale in 2007 that was kind of forced on him by the then owner, Craig Leopold, and then rebuilding this franchise. 15 playoff appearances since 2004. That's not nothing. I retweeted a graph yesterday that showed they're kind of in that top third in the NHL for playoff appearances, right? So I understand Predator fans are upset, that it's been since 2018 they won the first round, but ever since then the playoff returns have literally been getting less every year to now the first sweep in franchise history. So David Poyle turned 73 in February, and what's his plan for the future? We know that he wants to try and re-sign Philip Forsberg before he hits free agency. We've heard all the talk about how things look good, but we also heard Philip Forsberg say a week ago, there is business. Mm-hmm. And the closer he gets to free agency, the bigger the price tag that some other team might be willing to pay to him comes into play. And I'm sorry, when you start talking a difference of millions, that's not nothing.
No question about it. So what do you think happens with Forsberg? Best guess, I won't hold you to this, Teresa, but how do you think this ends?
When he said business, that makes me think that, as much as he said he loves Nashville, and for all the things that he likes about Nashville, at this moment, I think it's 50-50 that he's gone. And that's the thing. If you get near the draft and you haven't gotten a deal with Forsberg, if you're David Poyle at that point, you've got to get something. You cannot risk letting him walk like Ryan Suter did to the Wild and get nothing. For a team that is rebuilding, you have to get something for the ladder, or to stock up Milwaukee, whatever you get. So that's the thing, and the clock is ticking. And with each day we get closer to June 30th, then guess what? It's going to be getting closer to 40-60, 35-7. That's the way it's going to go. And maybe David Poyle and the Predators manage to surprise us, and they do get a deal done, and when we get an announcement that it's done and they're making him available and all is good, and they can try to build on this season, which was offensively so very good for so many players. But, again, right now it's, May 18th, and they don't have a deal yet. So, I'm just going to stick with that. I'm going to be pessimistic on this side because I've seen it happen before.
What about Hines? You mentioned that your hunch is that they will announce an extension for him. How do you assess the job he's done, and do you think he deserves this extension that presumably he will get?
Well, that's the thing. He walked into a really tough situation. I was so convinced that, Peter Laviolette would be let go well before he was. I was, a month in, I had preparedness written that Peter Laviolette was fired. Mm-hmm. And then it happened after the Winter Classic. And, so he walks in, and then just maybe 6 weeks later, the NHL pauses. So, and then he didn't really have a true training camp that fall. He's had one true training camp, and we saw some improvement. So I can understand if that's the announcement we get tomorrow. And I do think that Adam Vingan of The Athletic is saying that that there seems to be an extension coming. Well, you can make it. You can absolutely make a case. And so many players rave about John Hines helping them get an identity. So if that and when he was hired, developing young players, Tanner Jeannot, Philip Tomasino, Yakov Trenin. We saw some, evidence of younger players developing, but then I also worry about Eeli Tolvanen because, he's a guy who's offensively talented, and yet he disappeared at times.
Yep.
He's a healthy scratch. Just seemed to be in the doghouse at too many times. So, and I was in South Korea when he was just setting the world on fire with his play in the Olympics in 2018, and everybody was like, "Ooh, cannot wait to see him at the NHL level." And so, that's a guy who now seems like he's on the outs. Can he work his way back in? And by doing so, can they get that two-way player they seem to want, defense, offense, and not stifle the creativity he has when he's got the puck on his stick? So, I can understand why you would make the argument to bring him back. I also understand the folks who are saying, hey, there's Carl Taylor down at Milwaukee,
right,
especially considering that Lane Lambert, who was once on the staff here in Nashville, who was on Barry Trotz's staff for 11 years, is finally now got his first head coaching job with the Islanders, replacing his old boss. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to David Poyle's a very loyal man at times. This might have been a good chance to take and look around and see if you could do something a little differently. But, it looks like they're going to stay the course. And, doing that, you can make that case. We're going to have to wait and see how much it works, how much improvement they can make, because they set a standard, John. They went to a playoff berth.
Right.
And they contended, and they were the number 2 and 3 seed in the Central for a long time until they couldn't hold it. So, if they don't improve on that, people are going to be even more mad.
Yeah, no question. I've heard this term used a lot lately, competitive rebuild, especially as it pertains to the Nashville Predators. Teresa, maybe I'm old school, but I'm just one of those people that believes that, competitive rebuilds are very, very tough to pull off. I think if you're going to rebuild, you got to come clean with your fan base, and you got to strip it down to the studs and start over again. And I understand, the Predators, I'm sure the front office and the ownership group, wants to make the playoffs every year because that's great revenue and that's great for the town and everybody benefits. Everybody on Broadway benefits when the Predators have playoff games. But, if you're going to keep stubbing your toe in the first round, maybe it's time to retool things a little bit. Where are you at on the whole competitive rebuild term that's been bandied about lately?
Well, here's the thing. It's tough to tear everything down to the studs and do a full rebuild when you've got Roman Josi.
Right.
You've got Philip Forsberg. You've got contracts with Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene tying you to them, and you're not going to be getting out of those anytime soon. I mean, shoot, you couldn't get out of them last year when Seattle was, doing their expansion draft, right?
Right.
It's like, please take one of these guys, take their contract off our hands. And,
yep.
No, it didn't happen. So that is kind of hamstringing them. And, they did manage to get into the playoffs. So, you can look at this and say, and here's where they have to be very realistic with themselves and break down how did we play, how can we improve. And I can make a big argument. The penalties, they were 6th in the league in the power play, right? But how many times did they start games with a dumb penalty in the box and giving up a power play goal? So, the penalty kill can be improved, but they're penalties. Mm-hmm. That you can be an aggressive physical team without committing so many penalties. So, clean those up by even a smidge, and that helps you be a fresher team for more of the game. So, I can look at this team and say, you know what, they're not that far from being competitive, but they've got to make the right moves, because that's the thing. It's like, you slip on one spot and you can end up, do not, bypass go, do not collect $200 and go straight to jail. So, that's where they have to make the right steps here this offseason with any roster moves that they make and into next season, trying to get this team to play smarter.
No question about it. Teresa, I'm up against the break. Can you hang with me and talk a little Titans on the other side?
Why not?
I guilted you into it. I know I did. All right.
You did.
All right, we're going to take a break. More with Teresa Walker from the Associated Press after this on SportsLine.